Welcome. After more than 500 episodes, I have decided to give the Fintech One-on-One podcast a bit of a refresh. You'll notice new music, a new intro, better sound quality, and some more subtle differences as well. And we'll also be launching some new features soon. Of course, you still get the same quality interviews that have made this one of the most downloaded podcasts in fintech.
And so one of the things that I've learned in being in this business is that in business payments, especially when you go into middle market, it's all about the data and be able to have the data to reconcile the payment. The number one thing that a company in the middle market, what they want and need is they need the reconciliation data to go with the payment. So when they receive that electronic payment in, they know exactly, it's paying these 3 invoices in these amounts, and that data can automatically flow into my billing or my accounting system and auto-reconcile the transaction. And that's the problem that we solve.
This is the Fintech One-on-One podcast, the show for fintech enthusiasts looking to better understand the leaders shaping fintech and banking today. My name is Peter Renton, and since 2013, I have been conducting in-depth interviews with fintech founders and banking executives. On the show today, we have Mike Praeger, the CEO, chairman, and co-founder of AvidXchange. Now, AvidXchange is not a new fintech company. They started in 2000. And Mike is one of the very few founders who has taken a company all the way through IPO and beyond. And they've built a sizable business focused on accounts payable automation for the middle market. Now, if you don't know what that is, don't worry, we delve into that in some depth. Mike provides a lot of interesting perspectives here. He talks about new payments rails, what that might mean for his business, talks about AI, and lots more. So let's get on with the show. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let's get started by giving the listeners some background. I know you've been doing AvidXchange for quite some time, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about your history in your career to date?
Yeah, perfect. I actually grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up in a small town called Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and left to go to Georgetown to school. Then after my experience at Georgetown, ended up doing venture capital in Boston with Summit Partners for a little over 3 years. And that's one of the, was really the catalyst to get me really exposed to, not only entrepreneurism, but also, lots of different business models, especially around software. And I became very interested in looking at opportunities of using technology to automate manual and paper-based processes. I actually had the opportunity after Summit to run a software company in Boston that was in the business of automating the tax billing, tax collection functions for municipalities. When we sold that business in late 96, that was the catalyst to move to Charlotte in search of better weather, someplace where you could be outside year round, had access to a great airport, great, kind of educational system for attracting talent. And came to Charlotte in 97 and started another software company that was in the business of automating the hiring process for technology skill set workers in the visa process, everything that goes with the hiring process. Was able to, exit that business and sell it to Career Shop that was based in Orlando in November of 99. After that, I was the catalyst for starting AvidXchange. I was out to dinner with a good friend of mine, a guy named Daniel Levine, runs a large real estate company here in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And he said, Mike, you got time on your hands. Can you help me? I have this accounts payable problem. And, I can't, find invoices when I need them. Our team has a hard time getting our suppliers and vendors paid on time. There's probably some software out there that we could use. And can you spend some time with my CFO? And so I said, well, I know nothing about accounts payable, but I do have some time on my hands. Went and met with the CFO, and I was like, holy cow, this is like a really manual paper-based process. And long story short, that was the catalyst. I did a bunch of research and figured out there wasn't any real good solutions at the time, and started AvidXchange to really solve Daniel Levine's accounts payable problem in April of 2000. Next year will be our 25th year. But it really seems like a combination of probably like 4 or 5 different companies along the way at different scale. Just give you a sense of that scale. So what we do is we're a software company, and we automate the accounts payable and the payment process for just over 8,000 middle market companies in the U.S. But we are a pure software company before we launched our payment network in 2012. So in our first, it took us 10 years to get to 10 million of revenue, and then in roughly the next 10 years went from 10 million to 400 million in revenue, and it was really a phenomenal, kind of experience on average, growing over 30% a year for 12 years in a row. When that happens to a company, and first of all, it's really hard to grow by 30% in any one year, but to doing it, kind of 12 consecutive years, by really definition, every process that you have breaks at that level of scale every 18 months. And so to be in a business that, I kind of describe it as there's lots of chaos, and to try to, run a high growth business for through that period, there was all kinds of, really great lessons learned as part of that journey. Dial forward to today, we were fortunate to be able to become a public company in October of 2021. So we're now, roughly, finishing up our 30 years of public company.
Right. So you've gone through the 3 big crises of the last 25 years. You've gone through you started in the .com just as .com was crashing, right? And you had a technology company.
Yeah.
And then you went through the financial crisis and then COVID. So and you're still here. So you haven't sort of gone off into the sunset yet. So you must still find it invigorating and challenging, I guess.
What excites me is the overall market opportunity, and really dealing with kind of the problem set at different levels of scale. And that's why I made the comment. It really feels like maybe 4 or 5 different companies along the way, at the different levels of scale. People ask me all the time, like, Mike, why do you still, work as hard as you do? You made a bunch of money, and, why do you still have the passion? And for me, it's like, getting up every day and, working with great people, solving interesting and strategic problems is far better than playing golf. To me, it's like going to the adult playground. If I can work with people I just really enjoy working with, that are bright, motivated, and we feed off our energy, combined with solving, really challenging problems, that's a lot of fun for me.
Right. So before we get into where you are today, I want to go back, and you have a really different history as a company than most fintech companies I have on the show. You had a small scale company. You set up to $10 million in revenue over 10 years, and then you supercharged, and you didn't raise, you never really raised much money, except when I went back and looked, 2015, you had a really large round led by Bain Capital Ventures. Yeah. So what happened there? Why did you do that, and why did you do it then?
So when we went out to raise our A round, when I started the company in early 2000, I had a couple of successful exits. I said, no problem, we'll raise a $10 million A round. And we closed on our $10 million A round. We closed at $1.5 million, and I put in half of that. In hindsight, that's probably the best thing that ever happened, because everybody else in our vintage that was able to get out before kind of the .com crash raised way too much money, and they were forced to kind of to spend it in ways that were unnatural. The market opportunities weren't there, and they burned through an incredible amount of money. And so what happened is we kind of built the business one customer at a time, and got to profit, kind of what I call break-even profitability. And our mission was, let's just keep building the business, and kind of run the business to break even, invest everything else back into the business to grow. And so, it took us like 10 years. We kind of grunted through, and there was a lot of, dicey, months and weeks where, you had to close this one deal to make payroll, all those type of things in the early days. But what happened was we ended up building in 2015 timeframe. It was really kind of when we started those discussions was 2014. And we had roughly a $40 million software business that we'd built without really raising any institutional capital. We'd raised less than $10 million of capital from, kind of individual angel type investment funds. And so when we met with the who's who of venture capitalists came to Charlotte to meet with us, because it's pretty unique to build a $40 million software company without, any significant, institutional capital. Really connected with, Matt Harris from Bain Capital, who Matt runs the fintech practice at Bain Capital Ventures. he and I kind of really connected around the future of this business. And, Matt was the first one to say, Mike, you're sitting on an opportunity to build $1 billion business, and you don't run across that many opportunities. And so we, did our first big, really our first institutional round, which, Matt Levin, it was a $250 million round. And then shortly thereafter, in 2017, MasterCard came to us, wanted to create an exclusive strategic relationship to have us be their B2B payment partner for the middle market. And to support the partnership, they were adamant about investing $100 million. And that $100 million, it's a great story that there's a couple other institutional investors that were at MasterCard's actually investor day. And this is before the deal closed, and MasterCard was talking about this, partnership they're creating with us. And a handful of other MasterCard investors wanted to participate. So the $100 million turned out to be $300 million. And that followed up in, short order afterwards. And we, really, started investing heavily to build the infrastructure and scale to become, to put ourselves on that trajectory of being $1 billion business at some point. And so people ask me today, and actually I just wrote a book about, kind of the journey of CEO success of, managing, the 7 practices of leadership in a high growth business. And one of the things I really talk about is the importance of your talent and team at each scale of growth, because it's very different skill sets that you need. And when I think of our last 25 years, it's probably, as I said, 4 or 5 different companies and really 4 or 5 different types of, senior leadership skill sets that we needed at each stage of growth. And that's one of the most difficult things in terms of kind of managing through for most entrepreneurs is that, and people ask me, what's, the number one thing of advice that, and I do a lot of coaching for, entrepreneurs I give. And I said, the number one thing that, I learned at a very young age in that first, software company that I ran in Boston was the impact of hiring people better than you. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's a scary thought. What does that say about me as a leader if I have to hire somebody that's better than I am, more skilled, more experienced, all those type of things? And the first thing I say is it makes you a better leader. And so in every aspect of our business, I've been on a journey to hire just great people that are better than me in every functional area of the business. And that's really been the leverage in terms of, building the business that we've created.
Right. That's great. Fascinating. So then let's dig into AvidXchange today. How do you describe it, and what's your product suite?
Yeah, so we describe ourselves as a software company that automates the accounts payable and payment process for middle market companies. And so just simply speaking, it means that we eliminate the paper invoice and the paper check for our customers. And what's really, kind of interesting, the market is that there's 435,000 companies, middle market companies in the US, defined as kind of the expanded definition of companies between 5 million in revenue and 1 billion. And it's estimated 70% of the market is still processing paper invoices and paper checks. Right. And so we go to market in 9 different industry verticals, and in all 9 verticals, we're still single digit penetration, and we're considered a de facto industry leader. And so just massive runway of growth, just in front of us in the markets that we're at. So our suite of products today, we have a suite of what we call invoice accounts payable automation software tools that manage from, the time a supplier vendor invoice comes in through the entire, kind of approval, coding, allocation, assigning general ledger codes, all that kind of stuff around expense management. And then it becomes a fully approved invoice. It automatically then gets integrated directly into the accounting ERP system. And one of the things that really makes the middle market unique is of those 435,000 companies, 50% of them highly align themselves to an industry vertical that has unique either business process or accounting system process that requires an industry-specific accounting system. So that today, roll forward, today we're integrated to over 240 different accounting systems or ERP systems. There's a long list of, additional ones that our team wants to integrate to over time. But that makes, the moat around what we are doing really significant, and it makes it really hard for other people to try to get into our market because there's so much work you have to do, not only from a product feature perspective, but also from an integration perspective. Then the other kind of big kind of product offering that we have is our payment network. So once that invoice is in the accounting system, when the customer goes and creates a payment file of invoices that they want to pay, rather than that file going to a laser printer and checks being printed, that file comes back to our platform and we decision how every one of those payments gets paid to each supplier based on how that supplier's payment preferences are set up in our system. And so today we go to market on the supplier side with 25 different payment modalities that all have, and we define a payment modality as really 4 elements. One is the speed of the payment. The second one is the cost of the payment, the level of data remittance for reconciliation, and the level of automation. So we package those, and today we have 25 of those, 24 that are electronic, and the 25th is the good old-fashioned paper check, if that's what
Right.
people still require. But obviously, we do everything we can to not offer the 25th. The kind of the third element of our business is what we call supplier financing, where it's an element of our payment network that is, if you have a supplier, an average invoice has, say, net 30 payment terms. So they'll send an invoice out and they expect to get paid in 30 days. Well, a supplier in our payment network can send that invoice out and say, hey, rather than waiting 30 days to get paid, I need to get paid tomorrow. And they can raise their hand, and what we'll do is advance that invoice for next day payment, and we manage the credit risk of that invoice. But we have really unique information because we have both parties on our network, and we have visibility into all the historical transactions between those two parties.
Right. That's super interesting. And a place, I think that it's a great place to play because it can be a fairly high margin business when you're doing that kind of thing. Okay. So one question, have you never been tempted to go down market? Like you said, the 435,000 mid-market companies, there's millions, tens of millions potentially of small companies in this country. Like you're a public company and it's a massive potential growth area. Why not?
It's a great question. So when I think of the overall market, there's I think of it as 3 segments. You have kind of the small business market, the middle market that we're in, and then the enterprise market. And so one of the differentiators, one of the things that we're really good at is solving business process issues related to this business process. And what we found is that when you get down to the small business market, they don't have a lot of process around how they manage an invoice and pay their bill. It's usually, the owner or the entrepreneur doing the accounting at night, paying the bills over the weekend, same person's receiving an invoice, paying a bill, right? And it's almost an extension of a consumer experience.
Right.
And so the software in managing a business process is very different. And it's almost like a consumer, experience. Versus the middle market, our companies have built out finance teams, accounting teams, accounts payable teams. And rather than, maybe managing 20 bills a month as a small business, ours are managing hundreds and thousands of payments a month. And it's a very different business process that they're trying to support. Our average transaction goes through 7 different levels of approval before it gets paid. As an example, our average customer has like 2.2 accounting systems. So they're managing multiple accounting systems across many different bank accounts. And so it's just a different level of complexity. And then it's also supported by all these hundreds of individual, industry-specific accounting systems. In the small business market, basically it's QuickBooks, right? And then you contrast that with the enterprise market where, again, you have really big, sophisticated companies who many times have kind of, they were on the leading edge of this automating this process many years ago. And they have it highly integrated into either SAP, Oracle, maybe some Workday, and a very small set of accounting ERP systems that support that enterprise market. And they have very sophisticated requirements. Many of them relate to procurement and managing the purchase order process even before it becomes an invoice. And so what I would say is that we're each, for people that are in these 3 markets, managing 3 very different types of problems. And obviously we're in the middle. And what we believe is that over time, actually, we've kind of grown up market as we continue to add more features, functionality to our platform rather than going down market. We have more value to a customer because we're solving a bigger problem for them.
So when you're going in and someone's signing up with AvidXchange for the first time, are they typically replacing something or what is the problem they're looking to solve? Because they've got technology, they've got a billing system inside their accounting system. So what do you bring that they can't get elsewhere?
Yeah, so great question, because you hit the nail on the head. Every one of our 240 different accounting systems that we're integrated to has an accounts payable module, right?
Right.
But what we find is that module really supports a paper-based process. Somebody's receiving a paper invoice, and they're data entering that information into their accounting system. And then most of these companies, when they're paying their bills out of the accounting system, are printing paper checks. And so what we do is we're the front end of that process where everything comes in digitally, electronically. For our customers, no one ever enters an invoice into an accounting system ever again. When it gets managed electronically and that approval happens, the data automatically moves into the accounting system without any data entry. And then when they choose what bills to pay, rather than printing paper checks, signing checks, stuffing envelopes, it comes back to our network. We decision how every supplier gets paid, execute those payments, and then update their system on the settlement information, how every transaction got paid. And so it's an automated process. It requires no data entry, no handling of paper, no printing of checks. And that's the business problem that we solve.
Interesting. So then you've really got a really good window into payments trends, right? Because you mentioned the check, and obviously there are still some people, for whatever reason, want to still receive a check. I'm curious about the rest. Like we now have, there's instant payments with FedNow and the clearinghouse.
Yeah.
And how are you, when you look out at the trends that are happening in sort of spend management and invoice payments, what are you seeing? Are people wanting these faster rails in demand?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so one of the things that, kind of I've learned in being in this business is that in business payments, especially when you go into the middle market, it's all about the data and be able to have the data to reconcile the payment. And I'll take AvidXchange as a great example of this. Is our accounting department hates it when a customer pays us with just a regular ACH, because an average customer probably has 4 or 5 different invoices outstanding at any point in time, and we receive a payment. We're like, what invoices are they paying? Yeah, are they paying 2 invoices? Are they paying 4 invoices? And then guess what happens? It's a manual exception. And then in order to resolve it, we have to have somebody in our accounting team call the customer, then play probably phone tag to get to the right person, say, can you help us out? We got this, this payment, this ACH payment in. What invoices were you paying? And then now, son, that transaction is super expensive for us because of all the time and labor it took. So what you find is, and you can imagine if you have to replicate that like thousands of times, right? It gets really cumbersome. And so the number one thing that a company in the middle market, what they want and need is they need the reconciliation data to go with the payment. So when they receive that electronic payment in, they know exactly, it's paying these 3 invoices in these amounts, and that data can automatically flow into my billing or my accounting system and auto-reconcile the transaction. And that's the problem that we solve. So for the supplier, so when we look at, kind of the value proposition, we take a significant amount of that kind of data entry and that manual reconciliation off and provide the data along with the payment. And what we find is that's what people will pay for. And that's what is the actual data is actually more important than the cost of the payment. Now, having said that, you hit on a good thing about, all the new payment types, the FedNows, the RTP type payments, and how does that affect us? And so what I would say is, generally speaking, in the middle market, the timing of a payment is less relevant because people operate in a batch process. Joe Wilhite, my CFO, he's not checking the AvidXchange bank account every day to see, in the morning we got these payments in the afternoon we got these payments in. We, operate over the course of an overnight process to know okay, what happened the day before type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. In a small business, there's probably more sensitivity to, did I get this payment or not? Because I have either another supplier payment I have to make, or I have payroll I have to fund, and I have to make sure I have enough money for it to fund this Friday. It's those type of decisions. So what we do is we lean into and we make those type of payment opportunities available on our network. So if a supplier needs an immediate payment, they have access to an immediate payment, and there's a fee related to it.
Right. ACH is still, I imagine, a huge part of what you're processing, right?
When we think of kind of our different payment methods, we lean into what we call AvidPay Direct, which we settle through ACH. And what we do, Peter, is we take that standard ACH settlement process, but we wrap it with that data for them they get the data with the ACH. And then there's a fee structure related to receiving that payment with the data. We do the same thing with different forms of what we call virtual card, which is a virtual credit card, and that's one of the fastest ways of getting paid because a supplier can take the 16 digits that we give them and automatically run it right through their merchant terminal and have the funds immediately. And so depending on, the needs of the supplier and where they've automated their business process, that typically dictates, which one of the 25 different payment modalities we offer is the best one for them.
And are these payment modalities going across borders as well? I mean, I imagine you've got lots of your middle market companies that are demanding global payments, right, for multiple different countries. How are you choosing there? I mean, because obviously once you start to go cross-border, things get more expensive. Things get, there's obviously every country has their own payments network. What do you do there?
Yeah, so great question. So the answer is we do support what we call cross-border payments. And however, what I would say is when you look at the 9 different industry verticals we're in, they're not verticals that lend themselves to high volumes of international payments. Like we're in the real estate vertical. It's very geographically localized. Healthcare facilities, long-term care centers, things of that nature. So I would say overall today, typically cross-border is running, less than 5% of our overall payment volume. But certainly as we continue to add new industry verticals, like we recently added hospitality as a new vertical, and they are obviously supporting kind of hotel management companies on a global basis, we'll see more, international type payment flows.
Right. Gotcha. Any of the new types of payments methods that are cropping up, there's blockchain-based payments rails, pay by bank, and different things like that. I mean, is there anything interesting there that you're looking at as, this has real potential to displace some of the traditional payment methods?
I mean, the answer is I don't see things displacing. I think they're evolving, and I think what is the most critical thing, again, for a middle market company, rather than the speed and the form of the payment, the most important thing typically is the remittance data that goes with it. So they know what to do with the payment once they get it. And when you're, in an environment where you're processing thousands of payments a day, having the data to know exactly how to apply a payment is super important. Otherwise, you end up with stacks of exceptions, which then it takes human beings to be able to resolve them. And so what I would say is where we're leaning into is kind of that intersection of how do you combine a payment with all the data that's required in the most automated way possible, so it's as close to a non-human touch transaction for the person receiving it.
Right.
And so that's what we're leaning into. And so I kind of think of ourselves as a consumer of these different payment types. And what we do then is what we do best is wrap all the remittance data around whatever payment types those are and be able to deliver it through our integrations directly into, those, supplier customers, ERP billing systems in a very automated way. And so that's the kind of the value. So we're really indifferent to the payment types. And so we'll take those payment types and we wrap our data around it. We use it to integrate to, into our suppliers' billing and collection systems. But that's where we see that we provide the most value.
Right. So we're almost 30 minutes into this interview. We haven't mentioned AI yet, so I do want to touch on it. How are you using AI in your software today?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's interesting because it seems like, 2 years ago, everyone woke up to AI with them. They started getting ChatGPT on their phones. And we're like, holy cow, we've been doing this for a while. But, we started leaning into it, very heavily with RPA technology and RPA bots. And now we certainly have kind of upgraded those and pretty much replaced most of our RPA technology with AI agents. And so today, there's about 12 different use cases across our business, which we've really leaned into AI. Maybe, about half of them are client facing and the other half are more AvidXchange internal efficiency. But to give you an example of a few of them is one is on the kind of the upfront process of receiving an invoice. One of the things that's, challenging about an invoice is they're non-standard documents. Every accounting system, every supplier has a little bit different form of a document. And so being able to read those at scale is actually really challenging. And so, we've invested heavily in terms of OCR type functionality, machine learning, and now most recently AI, in order to read those invoices accurately and so a human being doesn't have to data enter, a paper invoice that's coming in, that can be automated right into our system. So that's certainly one big aspect on the front end of how to get all the data into our system so our software can manage it. And then, another kind of fun one is that we have, certain groups of, typically large enterprise suppliers. Utilities are a good example of this, where they'll say, okay, AvidXchange, I'll take an electronic payment, but you have to call it into our IVR system or log it into our portal. And so back when we started, many moons ago, we used to have human beings, in a large, building here in Charlotte, calling into, supplier, utility IVR systems, or making those payments directly into their portals. We automated those with RPA bots, and now we've automated them with AI agents. It's really interesting to see, kind of that, trend line of efficiency. And there's all of those type of examples all throughout our business. And we've really seen it, and how does it show up in the business? And to me, the easiest way to measure it is through gross margin expansion. And at the time of our IPO, our gross margin was about 62%, and today it's over 72%. So we've seen it grow by 10 percentage points, and a good chunk of that growth has been through the efficiencies created by AI.
Right. I want to touch on the fact that you're now a public company. You said you went public in the fall of 2021.
October of 21.
So it's 3 years then you're coming up on. I'm curious about how that has changed. I mean, you've had this company from idea all the way through to IPO. Not many people do that. I'm curious about, other than the obvious quarterly cadence you have to adhere to based on SEC requirements, how has it changed your company?
So, really good question, because, I get asked that a lot by, aspiring, entrepreneurs that, want to be a public one day. And what I would say is there's kind of two elements. One is the benefit of being a public company. The other one is, maybe the downside of being a public company. But the benefit is that it's made us a better company. The rigor of quarterly reporting processes, the accountability we have for our results to, public company investors, all those type of things. And that rigor has made us a better business. And so that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, certainly been value added in terms of attracting all the talent that we need to run our business, and having a kind of a liquid security is certainly an advantage over, perhaps being a private company. Mm-hmm. So what's the downsides? It's probably incrementally, it's a little bit more expensive to be a public company because you need lots of SEC reporting, legal, additional audit, internal audit, all those elements to kind of, safeguard investors, which you pay for. But what I would say is the other thing, which I think is, potentially, kind of the biggest negative, if you let being a public company dictate and drive your strategy, and the work you're doing with customers. That's where it's hard. I mean, we do our best to say, we don't let, the pressure of quarterly results, for example, impact our long-term strategies. We kind of said from the beginning is like, we see ourselves, today we're approaching $500 million in revenue, and we see ourselves as $1 billion revenue business in kind of 5+ years, and we're not going to let, the pressure of short-term, kind of quarterly results get in the way of making the best decisions for the business, making the right investments in our innovation for new products, all those type of things. And I think if you kind of, develop that mentality and stick to it, you're okay. But if once you start letting, kind of the pressure of the quarterly results change, your strategies of what you're investing in, things like that, then I think, it becomes a lot tougher.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So I want to close with on a little bit of a lighter note here. Listeners will notice that your sound quality is excellent, which I appreciate. And it's because I imagine that you actually have your own podcast. So let's just talk about it. I'll link to it in the show notes, but talk about why you decided to start a podcast and why you hosted it yourself, and also obviously what it's about.
So it's called the power of change. And what we try to do this goes back to one of your questions about, maybe, competition, or when a customer becomes a, new customer, what do they replace? And the answer is about 95% of our customers are doing this for the first time when they adopt our solutions. So we only displace maybe 5% of other solutions. 95% are doing the automated business process for the first time. So our number one competitor is a status quo paper-based process.
Right.
CFO's like, well, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. Maybe it's not as efficient as it could be, but it works. I get my suppliers paid. But what we find is that there's lots of opportunity to make that process more efficient, especially when you get a digital native professional that comes in. They're like, why are we doing it this way? Why do I have 1,000 checks every Tuesday and Thursday to sign when I don't sign any checks in my personal life? And they start questioning the status quo process. So the whole purpose of the power of change is to create a webcast or a podcast, I should say, and bring in examples of customers of ours, other people from the industry that have navigated this business process change or technology change for their business, and get their real life experiences of how they did it. What barriers did they have to overcome? How did they sell it internally? In terms of how do they manage their change management to make their companies better, and especially around some legacy paper-based processes. And so that's the catalyst for it. And so I've had the opportunity now to interview lots of our CEOs of customers, CFOs of customers, and to really get their real life experiences about how this changed their business, how this actually changed their lives. I just had one of our customers, Sarah Graffels, who's the SVP of Finance for Speedway Motorsports, and she manages a lot of the Speedway NASCAR tracks around the country. And she's like, Mike, it's like I'm on the road all the time, going from racetrack to racetrack, managing our finance operations, and to be able to manage it remotely and to manage our supplier payments, make our payments in a cloud-based environment. I don't have to be stuck in the office, and I can be on the field with my local teams at all the different racetracks that we own, is game-changing for the leadership of our company. And so when you hear stories like that, you understand the power of what we're trying to do. And I use, the voice of Sarah to try to evangelize that to all the other people and CFOs out there that are still managing paper-based processes.
But anyway, Mike, we'll have to leave it there. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. What an achievement to take the company all the way from the start to becoming, in the future, $1 billion company. That's impressive. So thanks for coming on, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it, and happy to chat anytime.
That last point that Mike made really struck me as so poignant for fintech companies, fighting the status quo. While there's always been a minority who are early adopters, the vast majority of people, they like the status quo. This is why I think what AvidXchange has done is so impressive. They have created a new way for companies to manage their accounts payable that replaces an existing system that is currently working. They have basically been able to break that cycle of staying with the status quo. So it has to be so much better than the status quo to get their customers buy-in. Anyway, that's it for today's show. If you enjoy these episodes, please go ahead and leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. And thanks so much for listening. Bye.